Hello, 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 hello. Hi, team. Thanks for your patience here. The vagaries of the London traffic has not been on our side today, but I am thrilled to announce that we are chatting with Justine, who is the founder and CEO of Mumsnet, coming at us with a really interesting angle on the discussion around AI, logistics, and how the legal system is really lacking in keeping up with the pace that technology is moving. I think you'll find this is going to be one of the freshest perspectives you get over the entire week's programming. Somebody on the ground who is kind of fighting the good fight from an ethical point of view. So big hand for Justine for managing to get here. So big round of applause. Amazing. So, Justine, for anyone who's been living under a rock, you are from Mumsnet, which is one of the biggest platforms in the UK. Quick elevator pitch on why Mumsnet is the dominant force it is in the space and what we need to know to set this conversation up.
Mumsnet's 25 years old, so we've got 25 years of conversational data. I think it's quite high quality data. It's probably the largest corpus of words written by women in English on the internet today, because we've got about 6.5 billion words, and Mumsnet is 90% dominated by female voices, so it's quite unusual in that respect.
Yes, I think just worth dwelling on that. The biggest potential corpus of the written word by women on the entire internet. So we're big stakes here. So when we think about talking about how we need to protect publishers' content from big tech, let's set the scene. What has been happening? What harm have publishers been experiencing? Not just yourselves, but obviously the wider industry as well.
So, what's been happening is the entire web has been scraped for model training the LLMs, and increasingly for something called RAG, which is authenticating the output of the LLMs. And publishers have been a bit behind the curve, ourselves included, in blocking that scraping. But even now, we have blocks in place, but they are largely ignored. For instance, if you are putting your content in Google for search purposes, then there's a little clause that says Gemini can use all of your content. So it's very hard to keep up with the bots that are scraping. They change their names all the time. And in any case, the search engines will have your content and use it.
Yeah, and obviously here we're talking about value, we're talking about intangible IP here that is worth something to you and publishers. So there's a very real economic cost to this, right? And when big tech's surfacing this or doing it without the proper compensation, and I think this is the crucial thing, there are means and ways that platforms can be compensated. What is that cost? Can you try and put a value on that?
Well, I think we're all publishers are seeing what's happening with Google search traffic. So we will all have come across AI overviews. We're increasingly using them. So you put in a question, you might get the AI overview, whereas once you would have clicked a link and gone to the publisher, and the publisher would have tried to monetize that in some way. So first up, it's a massive decline in search traffic. It's probably going to continue. I think the other thing is, as you say, it's our IP. We all have terms of use. Ours very clearly say that no one can scrape our website for commercial purposes. And it's part of our intrinsic value as a website, and all publishers will be thinking the same thing. This was something we'd banked on. We may not have it in our balance sheet, but it is part of the thing that we would be thinking about. How can we use this data to make data products in the future, give insights, et cetera, and that's just all been scraped and taken away.
Yeah, and what's really exciting here is Mumsnet are really putting their money where their mouth is, I think. And they are the first British company to launch a legal action against OpenAI in particular. So if you'd like to talk a little bit about that experience, where you've come from. Obviously,
Yes.
We've seen similar actions from New York Times and things in the States, but you are the first in the UK.
Yes. So we noticed that OpenAI crawlers were crawling our website, taking all our content around about April 2024. We immediately approached them and said, would you like to license our data? You obviously think it's valuable. We entered into conversations with them. We signed an NDA. We told them exactly what they had. They said they were interested. And then about 6 weeks later, they came back to us and said, well, actually, We are interested in social conversational data, but we're interested in a data set that is not freely available online. In other words, not something we think we can scrape for free. So at that point, I got a bit pissed off and thought that's not right. They know what they're doing, and we began a legal action against them. It's a tricky area because no one knows what the value of that data is, and in copyright law, you can only sue for what you might have lost if you've been able to monetize that. So it's a tricky area for that reason. It's a very tricky area because they may not have any lawsuits against them in this country, but the LLMs have multiple lawsuits in America, and their standard playbook is just to make the thing complicated and difficult while they engage in their arms race to become the leading chatbot out there. So they're just sort of parking it. They bombard you with very expensive lawyers' queries and make the whole thing, as everyone knows, that every lawyer's letter costs about £10,000. So the whole thing becomes really expensive, and it's just a battle of big wallets saying, we're going to just push this as far as we can. It could take years and years and years to resolve. And you, Mumsnet, are probably not rich enough to really see this through. And by the time you have seen it through, anyway, we've probably either won this arms race or don't exist anymore, and we'll be worth so much money, it's irrelevant to us anyway.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us in this room will be on the creative side of the industry. So for people who really understand the value of creative AI, like, we should really care about this stuff, because ultimately, what are we without our ideas, and what are we without the ability to kind of say that, these are ours and they belong to us? But there's consumer implications here as well, right? So can you talk, why should we all care? What are the things here that we need to think about on a bigger level?
I think longer term, apart from the sort of fairness of it all, if you ultimately have a system where everything is up for grabs and everything can be taken into these models, publishers will get no referral traffic, creators will get no referral income, and they will have to stop doing what they do. They will basically go bust. And then what will happen is we will run out of new material for the models, and the models will just be feeding on itself. Or there'll be 5 or 6 big companies that own all content. So, there have been some deals done. They tend to be done with the very biggest publishers. And the small guy will just put in the medium-sized guy, and all the other guys will be squeezed out. So it will have a very deleterious effect on variety, on newness, on creativity, and ultimately, we'll be a poorer world with just a few major corporations in it controlling everything.
Yeah, the enshittification of the internet is one of my favorite terms, so it's been bandied around a few times this week. But I think it's probably important to sort of end on a note that you're not saying you're anti-AI, right? Mumsnet themselves have been using AI in their business, so yeah. I think maybe let's talk on the slightly more positive side and how that can be used.
AI is a wonderful tool. I mean, I think we probably all know that now. I doubt there's anyone in this room that hasn't been flabbergasted by what ChatGPT can do. And we have used it to actually organize our data. We'd always had machine learning tools, but what the new models have done have allowed us to interrogate that 25-year corpus of data in real time, incredibly cheaply, to get amazing insights for brands, for governments, for organizations, and for our users on trends and everything else. So, I mean, look, I'm not denying this is the future. We just need a bit of fair compensation. These are multi-billion-dollar companies. I've heard that Mark Zuckerberg has just offered some researchers who work at OpenAI, who he's trying to poach, a 3-year contracts for £300 million each. That's what he's paying individuals. So they can afford to pay creators and publishers. And we just need government to step up and make that happen.
Absolutely, and I think probably another damning indictment of tech bros looking at the value of female voices as well in the technology space. So to end for our lovely audience, if you were thinking about starting Mumsnet today, obviously you've seen huge changes as being one of the first platforms on the internet in the first place. What would you do differently? How would that evolve with the technology that's now available to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to say is I don't think the purpose would be different. We would still be trying to make parents' lives easier and raise women's voices. I think I'd do from day one, I'd think about it as a movement, not a website, and use all the AI-powered tools in my possession to sort of link up the forum bit with WhatsApp, with ChatGPT to get all the answers surfaced. But I think most importantly, I would make it a community-driven project where everyone owned their data. I think the moat here now is no longer search, it's trust. And we need to make sure that we have trust with our audience, and our audience are stakeholders in what we do. So I'd probably do that a bit differently.
Absolutely. So what you're seeing is the political radicalization of Mumsnet, guys. So big hand for Justine. Thank you so much for your time.